That's
about what he's
right.
doing.
This meeting is being recorded.
Do you consent to the recording, sir?
Do you consent to the cavity search you're going to receive later?
So, Michael,
Sure.
it has been a while. How are you, buddy?
Been quite a while, my friend. I'm good, man. I'm really good. Just happy we finally got some rain. I know dry this part of the country is not the same as dry in your part of the country, but it got awful hot and awful dry here for a while. So just happy to be growing some grass again.
We're not going to pull them out and have a measuring contest in the first 2 minutes of the podcast, but drought is definitely way different in Chickamauga, Georgia than it is in the Red Hills of Kansas. Like I don't even want
to Skippy.
Don't even want to try to compare how much rain that anybody's had, right?
No, not at all. Not at all.
But we're still powerful dry here. The day before we're recording this is obviously way before release date.
Yes.
It was a dangerous thing. I woke up and it was showering here at the house.
Mm-hmm.
So I get up, get ready to go to work. I take my muck boots with me. I get down to headquarters, 8 miles south. It's not raining.
Of course.
Getting the gator pulled out of the shop after about 5 minutes. It started sprinkling at the shop. We got down to the south end and started to move cows. We were down there for about an hour and a half, and it didn't rain on us down on the south end of the ranch. I get home early afternoon, and there's about between 10 and 15 hundredths in the rain gauge. I barely got anything down at the ranch. So
yeah, like no effective rainfall, basically.
Yeah, it's the rain situation is depressing, but there's nothing you can do about it other than have a plan before it happens and to know it. So
correct.
So let's talk about that. You said that you've gotten some rain now.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of back out of a drought.
Yeah. So basically, like I said, way different what classifies as a drought here compared to most of the rest of the country. But we went basically from the beginning of June, had like nearly record high temperatures all of June. And it was like above 100 degrees and no effective rainfall in June. July 9th, we received like maybe a quarter inch of rain, and it was like a deluge rain. Like it wasn't just like a nice sprinkle that lasted a couple hours. And then we went most of July up until I think the 28th is when we got our first rain. And then in the last 10 days, we've gotten 5 inches. And I've watched the cover crop that I seeded in May go from being like 6 to 8 inches tall and like wilted and just waiting, praying for rain, to now I'm like grazing off my weanling calves and stuff that's over my head.
Right.
It's amazing like the root system that cover crop had to put down in search for water to survive, then allowed it to soak in that rain and just take off. So yeah, it's literally a night and day difference in 10 days. It's crazy.
So I know what would happen on my place if I got 5 inches of rain in just, in an hour. I could probably soak all of it in. Probably the same for yours. What about some of your neighbors?
Actually, Brian, I would say even us, if we got that much rain in an hour, we probably wouldn't infiltrate at all. That's one place where I'm really trying to use cover crops to my advantage. I am going to end up demoing a Ranch Works aerator this fall to try to see if we can mechanically make some headway there. But because due to the nature of our soils being heavy red clay, and also the surface limestone we have, like you don't have to dig very far here to hit rock.
So like filtration and sandy loam is a lot different than heavy dirt.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, so the good thing about the clay is once that clay gets permeated with moisture, it will hold that moisture for a long time. But at the same time, once that clay gets dry, to re-permeate it is a serious pain. It's not like you can just get a heavy rain and all of a sudden it's wet again. Most of it will shear.
Right.
And also it's a topographic issue too, because we have really steep ridges. Like we're talking very steep slopes. And so a lot of that rain doesn't just percolate, it shears off. So you get a lot of velocity with your water as well. So one thing I'm going to try I mean, we cover crop the farm this summer, but I'm also going to try this fall. I'm going to plant a lot of tillage radish.
Okay.
And try to see if we can create some biological infiltration to try to break up the hard pan and really try to go deep. So I want, like, there's no way I can subsoil here. There's too much rock. So we're going to try to do about everything aside from that to see what we can do to loosen up the soil layer so we can help our infiltration. But as you said, compared to neighbors of mine who say are grazing grass right now that's this tall because it's been overgrazed all summer, I would definitely say we're in a better position to take on a heavy rainfall and not suffer the kinetic damage that the rainfall gives.
Kinetic damage meaning erosion.
Correct. Caused by raindrops, not by shear force.
Right. Raindrops capping over the soil, or, you know, a whole bunch of raindrops running down a hill, grabbing rocks and all kinds of other heavy things on their way. So
precisely.
How did you make it through the drought? What was, and like I said, you know, it's kind of hard to hear about a 60-day drought when it hasn't really rained.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. But so like, what's your thought process? Did you identify it early enough? Were you able to get, hey, did you destock? What was your strategy to manage through?
So currently, like, I was operating, we've decreased our numbers, which that had been my plan previous to the drought anyway. I was trying to I'm trying to cull now for quality in the herd, and my goal is to be down under 300 head by the time we hit winter. So that's been my plan all along, drought, no drought. However, previous to, like, when the drought really started to set in, obviously kudzu is part of my drought reserve plan. So using that, and I've talked to you about that, not on a podcast in the past. It's like,
we'll circle back to kudzu. Don't worry.
Okay. Well, that was part of the drought reserve for me. But also, like, I mean, I'll say, I was telling some of my friends, local friends, that we were within about 20 days of a pretty severe destock. Like, we were going to have to drastically limit our numbers and start feeding hay if we didn't receive the rain that we received. And I think part of that too is just, like, you know, y'all's stocking rates out there mirrors your environment, and same thing here. You know, like,
right.
I'm running 400 head on 380 acres of pasture. You know, that's not something you can really do. and so yeah, so, like, the problems, you know, when you say, like, oh, well, a 60-day drought, like, oh, that's not that bad. But when you're running at capacity, or even technically a little over capacity, the problem's still there, regardless of, like, yours is kind of built in, where, like, 150-day drought might be more the norm for you, but at your stocking rates, it kind of affects us the same. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, it's all a management question, and just making sure you've got enough grass for your critters and can stockpile till you're going to grow more.
Bingo. And so, like, for us, we were about 20 days shy. You know, so, like, I have a buffer in there where it's like I can start making plans to do things, but I definitely, I put the cows in the woods and let them graze kudzu and whatever they can browse. That bought me 3 additional grazing days. And really, it saved my butt, because I was going to have to come back and start grazing areas that were not in full recovery yet, which I didn't want to do. But I was like, if I have to do this to try to make one more quick pass to try to pray for rain, then I'll do it.
Right.
And it bought me the time I needed. So
I've been in that situation before, where I've been right down to the wire, where I've been either getting ready to go graze something that wasn't quite ready, or I need a little bit of rain. And I've always gotten the rain.
Yep. Thank God. And, you know, I'll take it every time. But it was definitely one of the more challenging things I've dealt with in my time here. I've dealt with a lot of wet and cold, wet winters. And we've dealt with some dry, but, like, I have never seen, so we own the most of the watershed that comes across of our property.
That's
And
nice. That's really nice.
yeah. So that like we know like I don't mind to let my cows drink out of the creeks because it's spring water coming out of the mountain. Like, and there's nothing upstream from it.
Right.
So I'm not questioning like, oh, is that getting,
Is there an
pesticide
industrial
runoff from
hog barn up there?
yeah, exactly. So I don't mind to do that, but like the primary artery waterway that goes through the farm is just like dry in early June. And I mean, I've seen it go dry before in August when we were dry, but I've never seen it go dry that early in the summer. And so that obviously I was kind of terrified as to what that was going to mean. Because typically this time of year is hard when it really gets hot and dry. And
Right.
we've kind of seen that this year, like for the next 10 days, forecast is in the high 80s. It's just abnormal. So weather
I'd be
weirding,
wearing a
I
hoodie
guess
if
we'll
it was
call
high 80s here.
it. Well, I don't know. That humidity will get you.
High 80s is what we've had. Some low, like there's been some days where it's been high 80s at 7:30 in the morning.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Like all of June, it was 90 plus degrees by the time you get out and the sun's not even up yet. So believe me, I know all about it. It's just terrible.
Just the sun's just been angry all year.
It has. It's been angry. It's like somebody told me we're in a La Nina weather pattern, or I'm no meteorologist or anything, but
It's
like,
kind of
well,
like a
I don't.
2.5 year long La Nina pattern that she just
Yeah,
doesn't
I'm
want
like,
to leave.
she doesn't want to give up here. So, I mean, but it's funny because last summer we had the wettest summer on record here. It was just insanely wet. I was so overstocked in grass that and I thank God I didn't pull the trigger on it, but I almost went out and bought an extra 200 head simply because I needed that much extra. I had that much extra grass. I was like, I might as well take it on and do it. Like, and of course, when you're in a situation like that and you're, inexperienced, I guess you would say, like me, you look at a situation like that and you're king of the world, man. You're like, oh man, this regenerative ag thing I'm doing, it's kicking butt and taking names. Like I can
Right.
run 8 times more cows than my neighbors. Like I'm going to show the world. And then you get a hard, a hard summer and they're like, okay, let's pump the brakes a little bit. It's humbling, but humble is good.
Well, I'll say this, as we're both kind of dealing with our own different perspectives on drought, it sure does feel good when the neighbors are going, man, you sure got a lot of grass. Why are you pulling those? Why are you destocking? Well,
Yeah.
because the ones that are left have to eat this all winter. Have you seen the price of hay lately?
Yep. Yeah, that's something that I've been dealing with too, is with the neighbors driving by and being like, man, you still got some good grass.
You should
And
let me hay that.
Yeah. And I'm like, no, like I'm like, but it's funny because how much your perspective changes. What they see is, I have good grass, but to me, I'm like, I'm not really satisfied with that. Like it doesn't look as good as I think it should. Because they're driving by looking at a pasture that has 30 days worth of recovery on it. And I'm like, yeah, wait till it's 60 days.
Well, in their perspective, 30 days is probably the most recovery they've ever seen a pasture.
Yeah, that's very true. Very valid. But yeah, man, it's I tell you, so right before we got on here, I moved my weanling calves, and those bulls that you used that came from here, dude, I'm telling you, I'm gonna have to send you some videos and stuff. Like you're gonna be really, really happy with those Corey crosses on those bulls. I'm telling you, I can't wait to see the results.
Well, about the time this episode comes out, they should be starting to get on the ground. About, I think, mid-September is mid-September to beginning of November is when we should have bred them up. I've got 7. I've kept 7 of them.
Okay.
And all 7 of the cows I really, really like.
Yeah.
Like everything that we did on a fall try last year.
Mm-hmm.
If I could have picked out what I wanted bred, what I actually really wanted them to breed and keep, it would have been these 7. So I'm pretty happy with that. And I'm really excited to see how they turn out.
Are you thinking you're going to keep bulls out of them if you have any good bull prospects, or are you thinking
probably, because that would be a good back cross.
Yeah. See, that's what I'm doing. So like my favorite bulls are South Pole cross to those fleck influence bulls. And so I'm keeping them to then back cross because now I'm going to have some Mashona South Pole bulls that I'm keeping, or Mashona Red Angus. Yeah, I'm just an amalgamation of just genetic diversity over here.
Well, let's be fair. I'm getting a
Yeah.
few of your cast offs.
Yeah. Well, no, that was never intentional. So you said you named him Carlos, didn't you?
Yes.
Yes, Carlos the bull. So
Tell me about
when
Carlos.
when I sold him to Richard, um, I did so thinking like that would be a good, easy way for him to make genetic inroads in his program. And then obviously, Richard, I love Richard. He's all over the place, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, so when all of a sudden I found out it was on your doorstep, I was like, wait, what? Now I'll say this, and I might have told you this. If I have, correct me, but his dad was Hamish, which was probably my favorite bull that I've ever had, or one of them.
I kind of remember him.
Yeah, he was the most masculine of the South Pole bulls that I ran. And he's now working at Polyface. And so,
That's
if you
Joel
want a name
Salatin
drop,
for those that don't know that name.
I don't know. Yeah. So that's his sire. His dam is a now dead Mashona, that full blood Mashona that came out of the Central Florida herd, which, if those who don't know, that's the herd that is basically the original genetics from what was brought over from Africa.
How long ago was that?
I want to say it was in the 90s. I think it was like mid 90s. I can't remember exactly when. Okay. Because I think, if memory serves me correctly, they originally came to Texas, and then that Texas herd got sold to Florida. And I think they were brought to Texas in like the early mid 90s. And then I think somewhere around 98, something like that, and I might be butchering the numbers, they went down to Central Florida. But anyway, his mother was what Jaime Elizondo calls a 2 and 3. So she bred at 2 years, or she calved at 2 years old. She calved at 3 years old under ultra high density grazing situation, unassisted. So like from a hyper maternal standpoint, that bull is fabulous. But I don't feel that bull is going to give you any terminal value whatsoever. And that's why I go back to the fleck influence, maybe not to the full extent, but like even a cross is going to bring back some of that carcass value without siphoning away too much of your efficiency. Or at least that's what I'm going for. So,
yeah, I mean, there's definitely a great point you're making with the Mashona South Pole on the, coming from the bull side, not doing a whole lot for my terminal. And I see that.
Yeah.
I see that. And I know I'm still going to need to work on my carcass a little bit. And, there's a Hereford bull breeder about 30 miles west of here that I've been really keeping a close eye on their program for the last 4 years. And one of my clients who listens to the show, hi, Tim, he brought a couple of Hereford bulls up to put with his, kind of run-of-the-mill terminal cows. And, those two Hereford bulls, they don't look like they've lost a pound. They are checked in. They're working. They're always with cows. And everybody listening is rolling their eyes going, yeah, that's what bulls do, dumbass. Well, I've seen a lot of black and red bulls lose interest in cows on day 3 and go hide in the far corner of the pasture.
Yep.
Or just go stand amongst themselves in a corner, go stand amongst themselves and not be checked in with cows and not always be following some cows around. Like, I don't care how good your EPDs are. If some bitch won't stay with the cows, he's not doing his job.
Correct. Well, I'll say this, and I learned this from Jaime Elizondo. He told me that it's not always the bull you see chasing the cows that's the most effective. because a old mature bull knows when to be effective. So I noticed this. We're in transition right now from switching from all fall calving to I'm transitioning to spring calf, but I'm going to do that over the course of 2 to 3 years. So I don't just have like a glut in production. So I'm slowly like pulling bulls and pushing bulls from the fall regiment to the spring regiment. So this summer was the first time I've ever turned out the full cast of bulls in the summertime. And I noticed that Arrow, my most mature South Pole bull, he didn't go chase females. Like he did, like when I first turned him out, he went straight to them. But as we got deeper into June, those super high, hot days, he'd loaf in the shade during the day. But by the time we got to the time I pulled him, his whole underside was like raw. Like he had been breeding the crap out of some cows, really? But he's doing it at night. Yeah. And so Jaime has told me that like when you're dealing in really hot conditions, a smart bull, if you will, an older bull. See, a young bull just wear himself out. You know, he's a high school freshman sent to the strip club. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's just chasing it wherever he can get it. Whereas like an older, more mature bull, the older, more mature bull is going to do it when he knows he's most effective. So like at night, he can walk out there, it's 80 degrees instead of 110, and he's not exhausting all of his efforts. So take that for what it will. We'll see what the actual results are of that in the fall when we get our calf crop. But I think something to be said for a bull that can really effectively do his job. And I think sometimes our metrics are based off what we observe, but we don't observe as if we're constantly in the pasture, you know, right. Like, and so like, for instance, I was talking to Jeremy Ean the other day, which if you don't know him, he owns Lakota Ranch in Virginia and is a Devon breeder. And I called him up because I saw a post he made on Facebook where he has a bull named Red Dude who for 3 years in a row has bred 90 cows in 45 days. Wow. And yeah, so I had to call him. I was like, that's the kind of performance, you know, regardless of breed. I don't care about breed. That's the kind of performance out of a bull everyone should be striving for, in my opinion. That's what I want. Because I mean, especially when you start talking about the average cow-calf producer, and I know Kit Farrow kind of talks about this a little bit. You know, he claims his bulls can service 50 females, and he says that fairly regularly. But, you know, to the average producer, you know, that's not value adding, that's just your standard producer, you know, if you could go from having a stall of bulls that's 10 deep to a stall of bulls that's 3 deep, that's a huge savings in cost. And honestly, your quality is going to go up. So I always look at that as like serviceability of a bull. Now, granted, I would never tell somebody like, oh, just run one bull, because I've done it and that's a huge mistake.
Yeah, something bad can happen. Anything bad can happen.
Yeah, you never know. But at the same time, like the thought of having a bull or having a couple bulls that have the capacity to do that. And now obviously that bull's in his prime. I think he's 7 years old. I don't remember if I asked him. So don't quote me on that. Anyway, but a bull's not going to be able to do that like his whole life. But still, like if you got 3 years of a bull breeding 90 females, like that bull paid for himself, in my opinion. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, then you can talk about, you know, $10,000 or $15,000 for a bull if he's breeding that many cows.
Yeah. I mean, like that's like, oh, that actually pays itself back. It's much in the sense that like I just got a border collie. I'm not sure if you're aware of that or not.
Look, I spent a little bit of time stalking your TikTok, so I had some material to ask you today. Yeah, I was going to ask you about your little dog.
Go. Okay, well,
let's talk about
I guess I segued right. Okay, let's talk about Roo Dog. Rue is a dog that, like, okay, so I used to search for border collies. I've had people ask me ever since I got on TikTok, why don't you use horses? Why don't you use dogs? Um, and I don't use horses for a myriad of reasons, namely because they are very expensive.
So are good dogs.
But so are good dogs. The difference is I can get 2 or 3 good dogs for what it costs me to get one good cutting horse.
And a dog won't buck you off and break your arm.
That's very true.
Or
Also,
run you into a gate and break your leg.
Well, and also with dogs, 2 good dogs can do the work of about 3 or 4 good men when it comes to gathering cattle.
Or more. I've seen some really good dogs that can work in big country.
Oh yeah. And see, like, so for me, Rue came from Wyoming. She's from big country. I got her because she was listed on Ranch World ads. And I was looking for a short coat border collie that was timid, that had wasn't a real hard bite. And so the rancher that had her was selling her because she had no bite. He's like, she's got great eye, but she can move sheep all day long, but she has no bite. And me being a rookie with herding dogs, I come from the gun dog world, like, I didn't want to run out there with cattle that have never been treated with dogs, have a dog that's, like a hanging tree that's going to go out there and just grab ear, heel, nose, whatever he can get his maw on.
Hanging tree dogs are not for the novice stock dog handler.
No. And, I didn't want a dog that was going to make my cows really flighty of a dog or aggressive towards the dog. And B, I wanted a dog that had an easy handle, that I didn't have to worry about that dog running off the rails and getting his own ideas of chasing those cows. So it was really me just dipping my toe into the water in a kind of a safe way. And man, did it not open my eyes to just how much a good dog can do. So I'm currently in the process of looking for another dog that has a little more hitch in its giddy up. But it's definitely
like a little more aggression or more speed.
Yeah, not really any more speed. Rue's pretty quick, but I'm looking for a dog that's probably got more bite, like, because Rue has none, and when I say none, I mean none. So I'm looking for a dog that
run up and fake at it, and
like she'll run under feet that are getting kicked over her head, and she'll but if a cow turns around and walks towards her, she's backing up. So yeah, and the rancher I got her. Yeah, and so the rancher I got her from sent me videos before I even got her of her working with her dad. And she's a great backup dog. Like, she'll be right there behind, she's quartering behind them, but you need a dog that can walk up and when a cow faces them, will nip a nose, put a cow in its place. So that was one of those things. I was just real scared of an overly aggressive dog because I got young kids. I don't want a dog that's going to heel bite my kids trying to herd them. But at the same
cross
time,
blue heelers off your list.
Oh, I did early on. I'll let you run that road. Although they are the most adorable puppies in the entire world. They are little demons. So I noticed though that border collies are different, and that's kind of why I sought them out, because my former neighbor, who's since packed up their sheep operation and moved to Michigan, she raised and trained border collies. And so I've seen them work before, and I was always kind of enamored by them. And they have a pretty genteel spirit, but they can turn it on when they need to. And so with my limited experience, I was like, that seems like the safe bet. And so that's kind of what I'm looking for. I've passed over a couple Kelpies, but like I said, I'm kind of a novice to that part of this world. So just kind of feeling my way through it, but definitely has opened my eyes, changed my perspective a lot. Because I used to tell people, like, I don't need a dog, like I go out here and reel this pollard wire up and holler, come on cows, and my cows come. Like, I don't need a dog. And it's until you actually have the dog that you realize, holy crap, this comes in handy. You don't realize how much extra walking you got to do.
And then you start thinking about what you can get the dog to do and then what that
Mhm.
can allow you to do with cows and how many different things that you can start doing.
Yeah. So like, that's something I've looked at is I told my wife this the other day is I really want 3 border collies. I was like, that's what I've made it up in my mind. And I'm not going to get there overnight. That's going to be a long-term thing. But I was like, I think I could almost sit in the house and the ranch could run itself if I had 3 border collies. Like they're so freaking smart.
They don't close gates, Michael.
They don't. But, I'm going back to the Bob Kinford way of things. Let's start just training dogs to end herd. Just like get those cows moving and let them be the artificial predator,
I like it. I think that's a cool idea, but you still got to, then you got to train the dog to move the cows around the pasture.
Oh, yeah. That's a joke, by the way. But I do think there's some possibilities there. But I think ultimately, I think with the number of stock that I run, having 2 good dogs, because I'm not getting rid of Rue, love that dog, but she ain't got the bite. So she's always going to be backup. Like I think two more good dogs and I'd really be able to accomplish a lot as far as cutting out stock. Like right now, for instance, I still run with pretty limited infrastructure here. So, if I got to cut 4 steers out, haul them to the processor and the cows are, a mile away from any, corral or anything, I can take panels out, build a corral pen, but I've still got to run them out of a, whether it be, depending on how tightly I'm grazing them, a 4-acre paddock or a 40-acre paddock.
Right.
And so like, that's still not easy to do because their whole mentality is to stay with the herd. So I think being able to cut out stock, things like that, there's just a lot of things that dogs, good dogs allow you to do. But there's also a lot of, and I talked to Kyler about this a little bit. That's bad dogs can screw you up really bad. So that's why I've really tried to, look and do my due diligence before I just like, oh yeah, that's good dog, purchase that one. But anyway, that's kind of the up and down on Rue.
I've heard a lot of dog guys. Well, I haven't heard a lot of dog guys, but I know a lot of dog guys that have good dogs, and they usually travel with a pack of 3.
Yeah.
They've got their good dog, their backup dog, and then their dog they're either training or is working towards retirement that just kind of is there to, backstop the other 2. And 3 good dogs, a guy can get done a lot. And I bet where they really come in handy, it's not just during daily moves. It's not during your normal daily routine. It's when stuff goes off the rails and on your neighbors or, they've packed their bags and they're running down the road going to town.
Yep. That's the thing is for me, and I've said that before I even got Rue, is like, I don't need a dog on a daily basis from a standpoint of, really head and heel and whatever, like trying to move stock. They will move themselves to fresh pasture when I reel that line up and call them. But, because I'm running with limited infrastructure, stuff tends to go off the rails quite often. There's the taglesses around here that just decide there's no fence that can hold them and they're going to live as free spirits. So, though, I'm constantly dealing with calves getting out, cows getting out. And when I say getting out, I don't mean leaving the property, but like, being in a pasture they're not supposed to be in yet, things of that nature. And, that's where I go back to saving steps. That dog, they live, they're just not where they're
supposed to be.
They're not where they're supposed to be. So that dog will go out there and, bring them back instinctively. And whereas previous to me having a dog, I had no help. I was out there by myself, waving my arms around like a lunatic, trying to get, run the cow back to where it needed to be. And so really it kind of comes down to just having backup, honestly, more so even than I think the dog outworking me or anything of that nature. It's like, when you've got some of the ground we run here is very steep, it's still pasture, but it's very steep. And, when that cow can easily outrun you up a hill,
Oh yeah.
And you know how it goes. Like if you get out chasing a cow that's out and you're trying to get her back in, they're going to do everything in their power to make you say every word under the sun that you know.
I usually can't
and
say anything when that situation's going on because I'm so out of breath.
there you go. And so once again, having a dog that lives for that. I've only dealt with that once since having Rue, and it was life changing. And so anyway, that's pretty much where I'm at now with dogs. I've kind of realized like, okay, this is definitely something I want to pursue. So you'll probably definitely be hearing and seeing more from me on that front in the future.
Yeah, I've had a lot of requests for stock dog content, and this isn't it. Like I wanted to sit down with Kyler and do this several weeks ago, but something came up kind of at the last minute. He had a few things going on, and he said, can we wait a while? I'm like, yeah, no problem. We'll push that down into the fall. So
well, I think you definitely need to do that when you can, because I would like to see more of that. It's because, like I said, it's something I'm a novice at, and I definitely want to learn more about it. I've said that in my dealings with Rue, and really with any dogs, I personally don't feel like in my operation a dog belongs in the corral. I don't really have much use for a dog once the cattle are penned, because at that point I want low stress stock handling to take hold. And there are some dogs out there that are great at manipulating cattle in tight quarters, no doubt about it. My dog is not one of those dogs. And I really find that I can handle the stock more effectively without a dog present. But I definitely think in the open, whether it be in the pasture or open country, like, man, I think I understand the old ways of like a good horse and a good dog can really make all the difference. I'm just not ready to go down the path of the horse yet.
Well, you're also not really on that large of a place, honestly. And dog definitely makes sense for you. I mean,
for sure.
Like it's definitely a very cost-effective and stress-reducing part of your operation.
Yeah, for real. And just to cap that whole thing off is, we were kind of talking about bulls, and bulls paying you back in terms of their effectiveness is dogs in comparison to, cowboys that you got to hire for the day. If something goes off the rails, I've got friends I can call, I guess, but most of the time they're not available or they're busy or whatever. It's going to be an hour before they can get there, blah, 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 blah.
Or two.
That dog's really a cheap insurance policy.
I can see that. I mean, I don't know what day help rates are in Chickamauga, Georgia.
Well, you got to find it. Yeah, it's rare to find it. That's the problem. It's not nearly as commonplace.
Yeah, well, I don't want to say a number out here on the podcast and put it out publicly what I've paid day help, but it's high. It's high. But then again, you got to consider that guy's commitment. Even if it's only going to take them an hour to hour and a half once they show up, they've got to go catch their horse, hook up to the trailer, get their crap together, get loaded, drive wherever you're at, do the job, and then reverse the whole process.
Correct.
So it's not, when I got to call day help to do a job, it doesn't matter if the job takes an hour, takes 30 minutes, or half a day. I mean, if they're there a half a day, they're going to get
a half a day rate. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
They're going to get a half day rate, that's the least that I'll pay somebody. Not going to say what that is. If you really want to know what my half day rate for day thugging is, you can send me a message.
There you go.
So you've been mentioning weaning.
Yeah.
So, like, how far are you into weaning, and have you preg checked yet?
We are currently 20 days into weaning. I am trying to get to around 35 to 40 days before I turn them back in with the herd. I know a lot of people, once they go to weaning, they never go back to the parents until they're bred. I don't run two herds here any longer than I absolutely have to. So they will go back in to the main cow herd after about 35 to 40 days. If anybody keeps sucking, they go to the stockyard. That's just kind of the way I do it. and for better for worse. Weaning, we late wean, so I didn't start weaning until the calves were 9 months. I kind of like to do that, because I don't like to give the moms too much of a break. I want to give them a break, to recondition themselves before calving, but I don't want to give them, a quarter off. I give them like 2 months. Okay, here you go, get in better condition, calf. Because they are the creep feeder. I want them to be putting pounds on that calf right up until the tipping point, basically. And as far as preg checking goes, my plan is right now, if you've stalked my TikTok, you saw like I just tore down my death shed, my terrible cattle handling facility. And we can talk more about that in just a second, but I won't preg check until we install the new system, and that's probably going to be in September.
I did have facilities upgrades written down on my question sheet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can go right into that if you want.
Yeah, good segue. So what are you building?
Yeah, there you go. So I got together with AeroQuip, started talking with them, and I have this is what I call my interim facility. I'm trying to work with what I have for the most part, but some of what I had was just absolutely not effective at all. And it was really a liability in terms of safety and animal handling. So I was working with a system that was left over from a dairy that was then bequeathed to a beef operation that was here before me and has been in existence for much longer than that, probably 60 plus years. And anyone will tell you that working cattle on slick concrete is a really stupid idea. And I've been doing that for 4 years. So after many close calls and one injury that I sustained, I decided it was time to change that. So I leveled what I call it the death shed, just because it was just a low shed over concrete. And that was effectively what was being used as a crowd tub to a half rotten wooden alley to an old rust bucket Palco chute.
Well, hey, I'll say something about those old rotten corrals.
Yeah.
Gotta be a gentle handler or they're gonna tear them up.
Yeah.
And we got by in this country for a long time on wooden corrals that you couldn't just slam cattle in.
Yep. You learn to be vastly more effective. However, in my talks with AeroQuip and some of their people, they told me they're like, a lot of my problems were light driven because I was bringing cattle out of an open corral into a dark shed and then trying to get them to go into a light alley.
It doesn't work.
It just causes all kinds of discombobulation in the cow's mind. Also, like our alley was just, like I said, half rotten wood, obviously not adjustable. So I was constantly having calves turn around in the alley or get stuck turning around in the alley.
I know how that feels.
There was a lot. Yeah, there was just a lot wrong with it. And when you're young and stupid, you can have fun with it for a while. And there's multiple times that cows would bolt out down the alley, hit the head gate as fast as they possibly could, slip it, get caught by the back hips, and I'd run out, grab them by the head, bulldog them, and shoot them with a vaccine or whatever I was needing to do. That only works until it does.
Yeah, that's fun. It's what's even more fun is when you hip catch one of my Corrientes or Longhorns in the head gate, and they're up there flailing around with 2 feet of spear on either side of their head.
Funny enough, is I do have a few cattle. Most of them are gone now, but I did have a few cattle with horns on them, and it was always those that got hip caught. For whatever reason, I guess because if you've got somebody running the head catch that's not like really trained, and also it's even if you are really good, if that animal's moving at speed, it's just hard, especially when you got to judge the width of those horns coming through.
Yep.
But yeah, I know all about that life. It sucks. So anyway, long story short of it is, I'm getting a hydraulic chute, an alley, and a bud flow cow tub, which I think will radically change my cattle handling. I tore out, like, I haven't even posted this on TikTok yet. Like, the concrete pad that was there, had one of my buddies with an excavator come in, bust it all up. We used it as fill, extended the pad, put down fill dirt, capped it in crusher run, and I'm going to build a pole barn over the whole system.
Nice.
Yeah, so like, when it's done, it will radically change our flow. But more than anything, Brian, the thing I'm exceptionally excited about is currently I have no method by which to weigh my cattle, which drives me insane.
That's less than
And
ideal.
yes, and I'm finally going to get load bars under my chute,
Nice.
and I am thrilled to freaking death about it. And of course, there's a lot of other things that compound on that. Like, when working your stock becomes easier to do, you're more likely to do it, and not pass it by. And so, like, I'm now looking at like the potentials of maybe start doing some EID, and start
If you're
more
putting load
data,
bars
blah,
on
blah,
your
blah.
scales, you're already ear tagging, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so your ear tag, your bottom barrel Z tags are probably $120 now for
Yeah.
whatever they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 840 EID tags, if you want some next year, you better order them now.
Yeah, that's the thing.
That's the
getting
thing.
anything now. Yeah.
But the cost is real reasonable. You're talking like an extra $3 a unit.
Yeah.
For the ear tag. And Z tags, if they stay in the ear 18 months, a lot of times you're lucky, much less 2-3 years. And the 840 all flex tags are designed to be kind of a permanent thing. But if you got load bars under your scales, you're already going to have an electronic weight. Why screw that up by trying to transcribe it to a piece of paper?
Bingo. And that's where I've started to like shift my mindset, which actually, it's not a shift of mindset. I'm always trying to be more and more efficient. It's just a matter of taking it bit by bit. And now instead of taking it a little bit at a time, I'm trying to make big strides, to really take my time back, because that's something that I really was only working the cattle probably on a good year. I'd work them twice. On a bad year, I'd work them once, just due to limited help and it being a royal pain. I think this has been 2 years ago now. We worked the whole herd, calves, tagged, vaccinated. I mean, we did everything, cut calves, literally full herd work, preg checked, and we worked a 16.5-hour day, which, with the systems we were using, we were beat to death by the time that day was over with. Yeah. So that kind of is the stuff we've been through that led me down the path of, obviously things have to change. And, I want to get to a point where I look forward to working my cattle, because right now I can't condition my animals, I say right now, with the system we had in place, I couldn't condition my animals to take to the chute as if it was a low stress thing, because there was nothing low stress about it.
Right.
And so I think being able to regularly run the animals through, whether you're doing anything to them or not, just let them walk through the chute, just run them through the system.
One thing that I've wanted to try is run them into the chute, catch them, and then have somebody give them a piece of cake or a couple pieces of cake.
Yeah.
And then let them go.
Yeah.
And I think a positive reward reinforcement training scheme like that could really pay off. And dude, trust me, I totally get what you're saying. I'm sitting here thinking about like, man, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
And thinking like, man, it'd be cool to have the pens right in the middle of the operation. So but mine aren't. Like
Yeah.
they're almost in a corner. Like they're definitely on an edge, almost in a corner.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sounds familiar.
yeah, it's a balance. It's a balancing act. Like, yeah, I'd like to bring them down. They're in this time frame to do this, or well, maybe we'll just do it out in the pasture instead. Go out, sort the bulls off in the pasture instead of bringing them in, stripping bulls off.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be a little more pain in the ass, but it's lower stress on the cows.
Mm-hmm.
If I had a set of pins in the middle of the freaking operation where the cows were,
Yep.
it'd be a lot simpler. But if wishes were horses, I'd be on a flat piece of ground that I could strip graze all of and everything. Yeah. We got to deal with what we got.
Oh yeah. Listen, so I made a deal with one of my neighbors. Gosh, it was last week. He's got about 15 acres. He has 5 cows. He runs a food truck.
Okay.
And great guy. Love him to death. And really interested in building local supply chains. And so got to talking with him. He actually came by the ranch this morning. But I need somebody to develop my bull calves for me because I don't, it's kind of funny. It's like, well, I have plenty of land. To most people around here, like, oh, you got all that land. Why don't you just put them somewhere? And I'm like, well, because it screws up everything else.
I know exactly the feeling.
Yeah. And so I got to talking with him about developing my bull calves for me. And, I was like, why don't we do this? Why don't I send you my top 10 bull calf prospects, and the low 3, we'll just ban them, or you can slaughter them as bulls and run them through your food truck. And he was like, sounds like a plan, dude. And so
is that what he normally does? He runs his own through the food truck?
Yes. So he has a couple mama cows, and then occasionally he'll buy a steer from somebody. And so that's one of those things where trying to capitalize on things. But I'm like, we have to start. And I know I'm kind of somewhat running off on a tangent here, but
that's fine. Chase that rabbit, son.
But we have to start building localized supply chains that can value add. And that's something where I'm like thrilled to death about the prospect of that. Like, I'm just basically going down the list of things I'm excited about right now. I'm really excited about that in the future because, first of all, it's a win-win. He has one mama red Angus cow right now. She has thrown twins 2 years in a row and raised both of them both years. He's going to bring her to me because he's like, I don't need her. I'll just raise your bull calves and get the steers that I need. And so it's really a I scratch your back, you scratch mine situation. But also he's like, but if you ever end up with like a cow that's, on her last leg, can't really do anything. He's like, I can sell your ground beef through the food truck. Like, we'll just get a process, and it's like, you have standing processing dates. Like, just take her, and and I'll take it. So building those resilient, like, value adding supply chains is really something I've been harping on lately. But sorry, my brain is running in like 1,000 directions right now because I'm now, like, in my mind regurgitating up all these things me and you have talked about on the phone, like in previous conversations. And it's like, oh yeah, we should talk about that. Oh yeah. So on that note, totally unrelated, well, not entirely, but I want to tell you what my soapbox of late has been.
Jump on it, buddy. Let's hear it.
And my soapbox of late, and I'm not telling you that I have the most poignant, well thought out mindset on this, but first of all,
listeners of the podcast are they're used to that from me by now.
Oh yeah, for sure. Our brains work brilliantly alike. It's a scary thing. I think right now my soapbox has been the destruction of American agriculture from a standpoint of development. And what I mean by that is, like most people, when you hear that, what comes to mind is, suburban sprawl. And that is what I mean, but in a different context. I think partially what is destroying agriculture today is I call them the city subsidized farmer. And what I mean by that, or the wannabe homesteader. one or the other. They can, and so that what that looks like in my area and what is pricing me out of being able to buy additional agrarian land is people that want to flee the city, buy 5 to 10 acres, build a Chip and Joanna Gaines farmhouse, put a barn on it that houses a brand new, call it Kubota or John Deere subcompact tractor that mows that grass. And they maybe, if you're lucky, they have a dog and a couple chickens. And so what that looks like in my area is you have, a 100-acre farm, 200-acre farm, 150-acre farm, 300-acre farm, and they have all been sublotted into 5 and 10-acre tracts that now have these houses sitting right in the middle of them. And some of them put up fences and some of them don't, but none of them do anything that is agriculturally productive. And I know this is happening kind of everywhere, unless you're hyper rural. But that's something that really has.
I don't see it in my neighborhood, but I can see it from here.
Yeah. I think that's just one of those things that has replicated itself. And I don't know if it's a popular culture thing. And what's funny is I had a conversation with my brother-in-law, brought some of his cousins down here from Northern Illinois, Wisconsin area. They're from Milwaukee, Chicago, city dwelling folk, and came out here. And I was kind of on that soapbox talking to them because one of the guys was telling me, he was like, hey, I really would love to just get me about 10 acres and do this. And I told him, I was like, well, see, it's people like you that are putting me out of business. And kind of, he's like, you could tell his eyes got real big. And he was like, I've never thought about like me wanting this is taking away from people that are actually producing food. And I'm like, yeah. I was like, land produces things. And when it's gobbled up into non-productive blocks, it never goes back to production.
Right.
Like it will never be in production again. Unless there's some catastrophic cataclysm that levels the playing field and, a couple hundred years from now, sure. But in our society, we never move backwards in that regard, or it's very rare and it's a very long timetable.
It wouldn't be in the foreseeable future of of where we're at now in the world.
No. So we talk about like needing to produce more food for a growing population, blah, 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 the whole song and dance. But at the same time, and I'm not talking about the people that are truly focused on self-reliance. Right. There's a difference. There are people that are going out and would give their left arm to buy 10 acres and they're going to use every square inch of it to grow food for their own family or for their neighbors or whatever. And that's beautiful. And I think we need more of that for sure. But what sucks is those are the people that are getting priced out of buying that land. For the by and large. So I've started doing some consulting, and I've done a couple consultations for people and I'm not poo-pooing anyone here, but like for people that have money, that have bought acreages, not just small, like you're not talking about like subtracts, we're talking about actual productive farms.
Right.
And my first question is always, does this need to cash flow? And I've never gotten the answer of yes. And that bothers me. And so I was telling one of my cattle friends the other day, I said, I've decided I'm not taking on any more clients that say no. From now on, if anybody wants my help, they have to want to be in agriculture, not just living some daydream on big tech money or windfall that they got from somebody dying or whatever,
Bitcoin or
whatever,
selling Bored Ape NFTs.
Yeah. There you go.
I'm gonna have to borrow that if anybody ever actually does come to me and wants me to do consulting. That's gonna have to be the first question. I really like it.
Yep. I've learned and once again, to that same soapbox, the guy that I told you was my friend, does dirt work for me, that came out with the excavator and took down the death shed with me. He kills 6 beef a year. He has 20 acres. He raises a few cows, kills and sells 6 freezer beefs a year. And I asked him, I was like, what are you selling those beef for? He said, well, I just take it to, Skillet Hall up here, which is our local state inspected facility. He's like, and I just ask him, what's the going rate? And that's what I sell it for. And so I started questioning him on his inputs and his costs. And, and you figure out real quick that it's a hobby. Yeah. Like, that's all it is. It's just a hobby that's subsidized by your other business. And especially for those prices. So I kind of walked him through, like, I crunched the numbers the other day. For me, my area, with what I'm paying for USDA processing, if I were to go to the local sale barn, throw out all my ethos around being organic, grass-fed, grass-finished, all that jazz. If I was just going to say, I'm going to be in the ground beef business and I want to sell as cheaply to as many people in my local area, because my community is very poor, and I want to feed as many local people as I can. What that looks like in my area is I would go to the sale barn. I would probably be paying around $400 for an average cull cow.
Yeah.
I then have to truck her. I have to truck her to the sale, or not to the sale barn. I have to truck her from the sale barn to the processor. I have to pay $1 a pound USDA inspected processing, get her processed. And you're gonna, you're probably talking about, let's just use even numbers, say 1,000-pound cow. Let's say she hangs it, make the numbers easy.
Let's 400 pounds of retail.
You think you're gonna get 400 pounds of retail on 1,000-pound cow?
No,
it's not conditioned.
No, we're doing easy math though.
Okay, but you're not talking about hanging. You're talking about actual retail.
Yeah. No, you're not gonna get
that. I found no, you're gonna get 300 pounds.
Yeah.
Like, your yield's gonna be pretty low. So if you're lucky, you'll get 300 pounds. So let's say you got 300 pounds to sell now. Well, like, if you've got a total investment once you factor in your time, which, hey, here's a funny thought. You should get paid for work you do.
What?
Yeah, it's foreign ideas in agriculture. I calculated.
You mean you don't work for free?
How dare you? It's a lifestyle to work for free. It's $5 a pound. That's your cost. Your cost on that beef is $5 a pound. So when you go to the Walmart, which I don't, but if you go to the Walmart and they're selling beef for $4.50 a pound, my question to him was, where do you think that beef's coming from? I said, because their margin, yes, they can produce that beef for far less than $1 a pound. Like, the packers can, like, they're probably, I don't know what their production rate is, but I'm guessing they're probably 25 cents a pound, somewhere around there. That's a shot in the dark guess. I have no idea, but I know that they're very effective. So they're probably far less than my local small processor is, right. Just due to volume. So you take that and say, there's still not a whole lot of margin in that beef, especially when it has to go change hands again to a wholesaler to then go to a retailer, and the pockets have to get padded here.
Right. You don't just need $5 because that's your cost FOB the locker.
Correct.
You still have to take it from there and put it to your customer's hands.
Correct.
Plus marketing.
Correct. And so what I'm getting at is that beef is not coming from the US. I was like, some of it does. Some of it's the super cheap stuff that skates through, like, for sure. But I was like, those packers don't have any allegiance. Like, they're going to import beef from Brazil, from Africa, from Australia, wherever they can get it. And especially in terms of Brazilian and African beef, they're going to pay pennies on the dollar to what they would get in the US. And you're looking at, now you've got huge margins.
Right.
And so when you look at JBS or National or Cargill or Tyson, and you look at how much their profits have gone up in the last couple of years, that's when you start to put the pieces of the puzzle together. But anyway, circling back to my conversation with that guy, is I told him, also, you are putting me out of business. I said, because my cattle have to make me a living. And if I want to sell locally here, I have to be able to cover all of my cost for the business.
Right.
And obviously agriculture is, no matter how low overhead you try to do it, it's still typically a fairly high overhead business, unless you're really extreme. And so I was like, you're driving me out of business because you're selling for literally half, well, almost half of what I have to sell for, because I have to account for all my costs. And so that is another thing. I've been down that rabbit hole lately, and on that soapbox, whatever you want to call it, because there's other local producers that are doing the same thing, that are marketing to the same people that would be my customers. And I'm not talking about because I always tell people, I don't sell beef, I sell trust. That's my thing. I don't sell beef. Like, if I'm more than happy to tell people, I told a guy this today, a potential customer, he wanted to split a beef with one of his friends, asked me to compare my beef to Wagyu. And I told him, well, I'll be happy to do that, but it's an apples and oranges comparison. And you should probably just tell him he's not my customer. From a marketing standpoint, I've said this from the get-go, sometimes the best customer you can have is the one to avoid. And I've learned that lesson the hard way, and that's typically how it happens. You have somebody call you interested in buying half a beef or a whole beef, and they're going to split it with somebody, and you don't know who that somebody is. And then they get the beef, and that somebody was expecting, prime grain finished beef that they're used to buying at the Costco.
Right.
And it's like, that's not what I produce. And so, yeah, like, why does this beef have so much flavor? Well, because it wasn't grain to wash the flavor out, and it was dry aged, and you're not used to eating dry aged beef either. It tastes like beef.
It has a beefy flavor.
Yeah, exactly. But then again, like, most all of my customers, my actual customers, I've never had one not tell me that my beef wasn't the best beef they've ever had. And that's not to say that I'm producing the best beef on the planet. I'm not. I'm producing the best beef I know how to produce. But still, that makes me feel pretty good. But I've learned there's a lot of people out there that are value minded, and their value is really cheap. Like, they are conditioned to cheap food, as we all have kind of been for decades.
They are not our customer, though.
They are not our customer. The person. So that's why I've barked at you about this before on TikTok, and I've barked at Cattle Guy about this. When you tell people buy from the rancher to save money, I get furious, because
I don't say that. I don't say to buy from the rancher to save money.
I know. But I know me and you were on the same thread with Cattle Guy, and this has been like a year ago, about that. So first of all, we're selling something the grocery store can't give the customer.
Yeah.
And that's a connection to the production, to the land. It's trust, as I say, like, I sell trust. And it's also, if you go to the local Walmart and buy a pack of beef and you cook it for your family, and I'm not saying this is commonplace. Like, we have fairly good safety standards in this country, but if you cook that beef and you get sick or whatever, y'all get food poisoning, are you going to go back to Walmart and say, like, hey, this beef made me sick? No, probably not. And if you did, they might give you oh, here's 10% off your next purchase.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I can tell you, like, if that happened to me, if somebody ate my beef and it made them sick, they'd probably sue me for everything I'm worth.
Yes.
But the chances, like, we're selling the trust of that shortened supply chain, to where now this beef hasn't changed hands 6 times, and it's not mystery meat from you don't know where. That has an undefinable value. And by that, I mean, it's going to vary from customer to customer. Some people are willing to put a $1 premium on that. Some people are willing to put a $5 premium on that. And some people don't care. And the don't cares are not your customer. And that's fine. But I have a lot of people locally that are city subsidized with other jobs. Farming is not their profession. It's just something that they do, that sell beef under my cost. And it's funny to look at how much subsidy is, because we always talk about subsidies in agriculture from a governmental perspective.
Right.
But it's funny how much subsidy happens because of the lifestyle, that people are willing to do work for nothing or to lose money to then turn around and subsidize the food side of things, just because it's what they've always done, or it's how they've always done it, and it's what people are willing to pay in their area. So anyway,
there's a phrase that comes to mind that I heard, from Dave Pratt from Ranching for Profit School.
Yep.
He always said, if you want to be a cowboy, go get a job.
Yeah. Valid. And it's the truth. But the problem is those people, and I'm not saying it's necessarily a problem. It's a good and bad thing, because I'm all about local production and people knowing where their food comes from, shaking the hand that feeds them. Whether that be somebody that does it full time or not, it's just how that affects the actual market. Because when you have people, obviously, if you have a glut of supply, because you have a lot of people willing to produce something at a really cheap cost that doesn't actually factor in the real cost,
right,
then that sets the price standard. Whereas the people like me and you over here, like people that make their living in this industry, are held to a higher standard, or we have to be slaves to our operation. Like we have to work for free to make up that glut difference.
Right. Our lack of a wage is our subsidy, because we don't have tab jobs. And
bingo.
You're talking about, the city subsidized farmer, which I'll probably go ahead and use that phrase a little more. You're talking about that just screwing up your local beef market. And I want to take that a step further and say that those same folks that are raising 5 or 10 calves in their backyard, that are selling to the barn, that are selling their weaned calves to the barn, that's what all the backgrounders are picking up and putting these packages putting the potload package together, send it somewhere a little farther west where there's a little more grain. And, that's what ends up in feedlots as, quote, high risk is, not to pick on Georgia, but, is a couple potloads of cows, a couple potloads of steers from 15 different little farms in Georgia that all went through the same barn that some buyer put together in a potload.
It happens. Like, that's the thing. People people that flirt with the industry that aren't really in it don't understand is the cow calf side of things, that how much of the cow calf industry actually lives on the East Coast and is radically decentralized. It's mom and pop, not full-time, not a business. And it creates an environment that creates cheap prices. And that's just it. Like, when I see prices of sale barns, like from Oklahoma west, especially like the Dakotas, places where Nebraska, places where people are in the business,
where there's actually a market.
Sometime. Well, not always, but if you can cost compare all day long, and our prices will always be radically cheaper. And obviously, there's fuel cost involved in terms of shipping those cattle west, blah, 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 blah. But I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that people are willing to give away animals and just blame it on the all shucks, well, we'll get them next year, because they're not in the business. They're price takers. They're not price setters.
They're city subsidized farmers. They're hobbyists. They have no idea what their input cost is. They have a town job.
They don't care.
Pick your flavor,
because it's because, well, I got the grass and I'd have to mow it if I didn't have them cows.
It cost me less to feed them cows all winter than it would cost me to mow the pasture. Like,
correct.
Well, thanks, asshole. You're just ruining the calf market for everybody else.
Correct. And so, it gets into me and you all always get to this is like, okay, what's the root? Well, the root of it, like, how do you fix the problem? It's easy to point out the problem, but how do you fix it?
Yeah, that's the fun part.
And you know, I don't know that there is an easy fix other than education to the end consumer. Because, like, for instance, that customer I talked to today wanted to talk, you know, tell me the difference between this and Wagyu. You know, if you're going to ask me that question, I'm fine to answer it, but you might not be able to comprehend my answer because I mean, and I'm not saying that to downplay anyone's intellect. It's just simply like there's a lot of nuance to this business. You know, like if I have to explain to you that, like, first of all, that you're the same person. If you're asking me what the difference in my beef and Wagyu is, you're the same person that sees certified Angus beef and you think that is better than the beef that's sitting beside it and that's not certified Angus.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, and I'm not downplaying certified Angus. This is the greatest marketing that's ever been done on the history of the planet.
Fabulous marketing campaign.
Yes. But ultimately, you know, like I always say, like, I have a 3-prong approach to my customer base. And one is people that are health minded because, you know, like it or hate it, you probably have people that listen to this podcast that think, oh, well, that grass-fed stuff's crap, blah, 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 you know, whatever. I've heard it all.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, there are people that are willing to buy it. There are people who are willing to buy it at a premium. Somebody has to produce it. And in my case, my goal is to produce it with the utmost integrity and no greenwashing. Because that's something that happens constantly. And I don't know really anyone in this industry, this portion of the industry, that isn't deeply entrenched in covering up things. Whether it's, oh, well, you know, they're grass-fed, grass-finished. They only, you know, if you go out there and actually meet them farmer to farmer, yeah, they get a bucket of grain a day, but you know, it's not really enough to matter to anything. You know,
it's less than 0.5% of their body weight, and that's okay by the guidelines that they can eat that much.
Bingo. Okay. And I'm like, that, you know, that's fine. If that's your ethos and you're okay with that and you can sleep at night,
just be honest about it.
Yeah. I'm the person that just says, this is the way that I'm raising the beef that my family wants to eat. That, like, the standards we hold ourselves to is the beef I produce for other people. And if you don't see that from a health standpoint, then that means your valuation of my beef is going to be lower. So that's one. Two is shaking the hand that feeds you. Is you have to be locally minded. You have to want to know where your food comes from and how it's produced. And so, like, I'm building the trifecta of my perfect customer because you can be heavy weighted on one end and then have none of the other spectrum, and you still won't want to buy my beef because what I do, I realize, is hyper niche. Because I feel like I'm niche within the grass-fed, grass-finished world. Because there's not many people out there that are doing it organically. And even if they are grass-fed, like I said, there's a lot of people that add some nuanced flavor to what that actually means.
Right.
And that are doing so, you know, like, I try to be full spectrum. So whatever. Not to say in any way that I'm better than anyone else, because if you run a feedlot, good for you, as long as you're profitable. But at the same time, that, like, we have to know who our customers are, and the guy that's running a cow-calf operation, you know, let's say in, who cares, Texas, like, he has to know that his customer is not the same as my customer, and that's okay because we both have a customer base. The guy that's selling grain finished beef in Southeast Tennessee that is in competition with me is not really even in competition with me. Right. Because, like, I have a cousin one county over who runs about the same herd size as me. When I first started this, he was already in the business. His granddad got him into it. And he, like, you know, if you could draw a different mindset than mine. That's him. He's old school, grain finished, like cow calf, organics for freaking hippies, blah, 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 blah. So I tried to convince him from the start not to do what I'm doing, but that he needed to be selling beef. He was he was cow calf producing. He was raising his calves and selling them in lot loads, chasing that premium. And he was doing well. But I tried to tell him, like, dude, you got to get into selling local beef. Like, ultimately, the most money to be made is in that. And he just started selling beef like a month and a half ago. And so once again, when I first saw that, first of all, I don't really talk to him much anymore, but like, I was like, oh my God, he finally started doing it. Wait, I have more competition now. And then I realized, I was like, not really. But what I have found on the competition side of things is like the Weston A. Price folks of the world, those are more the people that I choose to market to, the people that are very awake, I guess you'll call. I don't like to use the term woke because that has political implications.
Yeah, that's
but,
that's a 4-letter word on this podcast.
Yeah, we don't like that. But people that are living wide awake, that see things for what they are, that want to drink raw milk, that want to know where their food comes from, that want, they already grasp that sphere of it. But even then, I don't even market to those people. I let them come to me via word of mouth. But it's incredible to me that even within those groups of people that you consider to be awake, you still find tons of people that, oh, well, I buy my beef from such and such and such and such. And, I can't help myself. See who that is. Look it up. And, and they're just a local grain finished beef operation. I'm like, wait, oh, okay. What, to each their own. But when you start coming on to those same platforms and marketing like, hey, we're selling half beef for $2 a pound. At that point, I just pull up. I mean, this actually happened. This happened about 2 weeks ago. Somebody did that. And my response to that was simply to pull up the USDA grass-fed report and just post a picture of it, where it says that the national average for a half at carcass weight for grass-finished beef is $9 a pound. Take that for what you will. I've gotten to the point now where I realized, I guess when I was young and dumb, I enjoyed it, but now I just like online arguments are frivolous and stupid. So just here you go, take that, educate yourself and move on.
I agree 100%. And I try not to argue on social media. I just state my point, move on. Try not to do a whole lot of trolling. So have you seen any changes in your customer base over the last year or so?
Yes and no. So it's funny. I had a customer last month send my wife an email. Don't know how in the world he got my wife's email. It's not listed anywhere.
Okay.
Now my wife is a real estate agent, so I'm like, it gets listed, but not
probably
like
not
with
hard
the
to find
business. Yeah, but it's like not with the business. So I'm like, whereas the business, I don't do actually that much marketing. I'm not buying Facebook ads. I'm not doing like your standard stuff. I'd like to get into doing more marketing. I just don't have the time for it right now. So I know many people would say I don't have the time not to. Just gonna throw that out there before someone else says it.
I wasn't gonna say it. I wasn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna throw that one out.
But at the same time, I haven't really struggled thus far to fill orders, but I'm not swamped in orders like I would like to be. Let's put it that way. So like as far as my customer base changing, I've seen more and more people reach out to me because they want to buy local and I've had a flood of people. Hey, they start the email or the text or whatever, or the phone call with, I've never done this before, but that always excites me and terrifies me, because I'm either fixing to waste an hour of my time educating someone who still is going to take away everything I just said and go buy from the person that's producing the $4 a pound beef.
Probably.
Or yeah, and that's fine. Or I'm going to have a customer for life. I've figured out that it's kind of one or the other. And those are the people, obviously, who wouldn't be interested in that, but those are the people I'm truly chasing, because I kind of look at it like this. Is me and you've talked about this before. You can kind of see the writing on the wall if you go up to 40,000 feet and look at U.S. agriculture and the political climate and the geopolitical climate and everything that's going on. Like, we are a mere breath away from the entirety of our industry being turned on its head. With that,
I can't disagree.
Yeah, with that, I kind of look at it from a standpoint of, I want the customers that when they call me because their freezer's getting kind of low and you can't get beef at the grocery store, or it's 4 times what it is now, and you got to just take what you can get.
That day could be coming.
And that day, I mean, not to be all gloom and doom, but I think that day is coming. Whether it come this year or whether it come next year or the next year, I'm not putting a date on it. I'm just saying it's closer than what most people want to look through their rose-colored glasses and see. I want to have the customer base that says that like when they call me, I feel an emotional connection to that person to help them, because I view them almost like family.
Yeah.
So I guess you'd say like growing a customer base that of like-mindedness and awareness is kind of what I'm shooting for. And that may be like trying to pull a rabbit out of a hat. It might be a little bit of a magic trick to amass enough people to make that financially viable. I don't know if I'll ever fully get to that point. You're still going to have to sell halves and wholes to the occasional, fitness buff person that just wants to try it, or the whatever, the one-offs. But I think it's vastly more important to build a network and that's why I started doing box beef sales again, and I'm still just flirting with it, but trying to do subscription boxes. And me and Hobbs have talked about this before, and I kind of gave him my framework for how to do it. Is basically, instead of trying to sell halves and wholes, which I prefer to do because it's just simpler, is to we're constantly getting in the beef side of things is people that either don't have the financial resources to put that much money on the table at one time, because it's a huge financial commitment, or B,
sure,
lacked the freezer space or the place to put said freezer. Because a lot of our clientele is down in like the metro Atlanta area. Whether or not you actually don't have space for a freezer is up to you. You might just be a pack rat. I don't know. But ultimately, that's why we're like, okay, what can we do to then streamline this process to basically sell shares of a cow without having to go through the process of like, you get to select this, this, and this. The problem I have found with that is there's not enough additional margin in doing that to make up for the extra effort involved. The only thing that's beneficial to it is from a scheduling standpoint. Let's just use a round number and say like I had 10 processing dates. You can have 10 processing dates and have to find 10 whole beef customers, which to anybody that's done this, that's not always simple to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Even if you
10
have
people that are willing to
800,000 followers on social media.
It doesn't matter. And I've told you this before, TikTok is not a place to sell beef. I still market it on there some, but I've only ever sold 1/2 cow, I think. No, I take it back. I've sold 1.5 cows to TikTok followers, because by and large, TikTok is shooting birdshot at 300 yards. Like, you might get lucky 1 in a million, but ultimately the viewership is not tailored to that. And now TikTok has changed their algorithm even more to where if you try to market a product, they drastically censor the viewership. So anyway,
can't imagine why, because they probably want to drive their ad revenues up.
Who knew?
Yeah.
But as far as doing like the box beef sales, I found that it's a lot of extra work, not a lot of extra margin, if any. But the good thing about it is for me is to say that same trying to find those 10 whole beef customers. Well, let's say the box represents a 1/8 portion of the cow. Well, now I need 80 people that can buy a 25-pound box of beef on a monthly basis.
Yep.
Or 160 customers that can do it on a bi-monthly basis and stagger it. That's a lot. It sounds like, oh my God, it's so many more customers, but it's a lot easier to convince somebody to buy that small amount than it is, and with the freezer space they currently own, then hey, go out and buy a freezer and then go buy this beef, and spend all this money. Especially when most of those people, the first thing out of their mouth is, well, can I try it first before I commit to it? And I'm like,
he's out there walking around like,
yeah, it's like, I've already committed to killing this animal. So it's kind of hard to let you taste him while he might taste a little weird still on the hoof. But that's one of those things where when we got into that, like, and I'm just kind of weighing out to you the pros and the cons of it, is you kind of figure out, you're never going to outperform an like butcher box.
Right.
Like, that's your competition. And they own that market, and their prices are going to be lower than yours because they have the volume. I personally never could figure out how to actually ship the beef without either spending like my left arm, or B, having to be drastically concerned about the beef, because when it's 105 degrees outside and that box is getting shipped, UPS ground or whatever, in a unconditioned hot box that's 130 degrees on the inside.
Hey, UPS trucks have never had air conditioning, and I'm sure that was a condition of taking that job, is they knew the fucking truck didn't have air conditioning.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not getting in on that. Like, if you want to be a UPS driver, those people are union and they get paid really well. Suck it up. You can come out and work cows with me if you really think everything is so bad.
Yeah, if you think it's bad in the
full time.
If you think it's bad in a UPS truck, go get in an engine room of a Navy destroyer in June in the Persian Gulf. 140 in the ventilation feels like a nice vacation.
And you're in there for how long, Brian?
When there was a point where it was too hot in the engine room. They had to cut our watches down to like to 2 hours for heat stress. Like, that's 2 hours out of 10 is all you could be down there.
2 hours. And that's when it got real bad. 2 hours. How long do you think a UPS driver gets in that truck for? In a one period piece of time? 2 minutes?
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, it's different where you're at than where I am, because it's miles and miles and miles. Sometimes I think the guy sometimes goes an hour in between deliveries, depending on where he's at.
No, I'm not talking about in the cab. I'm talking about in the back.
Yeah.
Because that's where they're taking the measurements. It's not up in the cab where the doors open and they're blistering down the road and get, like it's, but anyway, let's not talk about UPS. Let's not chase that rabbit. Exactly.
Let's talk about rabbits. Let's talk about your rabbits.
Okay. So another little venture I've been down lately. I got 2 does and a immature buck. They're mutt rabbits, but they're mostly silver fox and Champagne d'Argent meat rabbits. And that was just kind of like one of those things I've been flirting with for a long while. And
are you getting into the seed stock meat rabbit business?
You know it.
That has a nice ring. That has a nice
Yeah.
ring to it.
Well, I think ultimately, and you'd be surprised, I think there's money probably in like it is in any industry. I think there's probably money to be made there. I actually have one of my beef clients who's already like on me to like he wants to buy rabbit from me. And I'm like, I don't really know if I want to do this on a commercial basis. I kind of did it just so I could produce meat for my family because I really like rabbit. And the reason I got into it is I saw what was going on in Ukraine, what was happening to grain prices here, like in the US. Like, okay, grain's going to get way more expensive before they decided to dump glut everything. And I was like, raising meat birds is intensive in grain. And I was like, that's going to get more and more expensive. It's a huge risk where it's not really replicable because meat chickens, ultimately, I have to call Murray McMurray or, Crackle or something. I have to call a hatchery, order those birds and have them shipped to me. Whereas rabbits produce virtually, not exactly the same, but virtually the same product. And they can do it. I'm not saying it's as efficient, but they can do it all on grass. So for me, you call it survivalism, call it whatever you want. Like part of it was just a hobby for fun and just to try something. But I honestly have had them now for, I'd say it's been at least a month. And I regret not getting them sooner. I have enjoyed having them. I don't keep them in pens like traditionally is done. They're not just in cages. I keep them in the barn in a stall that I put chicken wire around. And they call that in the rabbit world, that's colony. That's a rabbit colony. When you allow your rabbits to actually live like rabbits, they can run around, jump, burrow, do all the things that rabbits do. And they're fun animals. Like, I can go in there and they don't necessarily want to be held, but if you go in there and just squat down and sit for a second, like they come up and they're sniffing you, kind of like cows will do. If you go out and just sit in the cow pasture, your cows get curious, come sniff you. So it's been really a good thing, and it's really not expensive to get into. So, I'm not going to tell you need to get rabbits, Brian, but I think you should probably try to get some rabbits. It'd be a worthwhile endeavor. You might enjoy it. Who knows?
Well, there's nobody around me doing rabbits, so I mean,
yeah,
that could work.
Well, my thing is, I said, if you were going to have something that's quickly scalable, there are 3 businesses you can get into in livestock that scale very quickly, and that's sheep, or I'll just say small ruminants, but definitely sheep because I don't screw with goats. Sheep, pigs, and rabbits, and one of which is literally known for breeding like rabbits.
There's a reason they say that.
There is a reason. And so now I have no experience with it. I've never dealt with it. I'm going to, but
you're about to in about 2 months.
Yeah, exactly. But I do feel like, okay, I'm going to build a couple rabbit tractors for my grow out pens, and I'm going to move them much in the same way people do chickens. And Joel Salatin's son, Daniel, has done this for many, 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 many years with good success. And I don't know that there's necessarily a way in which I could sell that rabbit, but I'm not going to say there's not, because like I said, there's a market and a way to make money with it, just about anything. And
I know you, and by the time you have rabbits to sell, you'll have it figured out.
I'll have some, or I'll be figuring it out. But
I see you on TikTok selling rabbit hats and Lucky Rabbit's feet.
Just whatever, just anything I can do to value add those bad boys. I think ultimately the rabbit though is, I forgot to mention this, is processing. So comparing rabbits to chickens, processing chickens is a pain. I've done it plenty of times. Like it takes infrastructure to do chicken processing on almost any scale. Like
a rabbit is probably faster per pound. Probably a lot faster per pound.
A rabbit is quick, man. And all you need is a knife.
And not even a big one.
No, I mean, you can have a rabbit skinned out, gutted, in the chill tank in probably like somebody that's skilled with it. I mean, I've seen people do it on video in like less than 30 seconds.
I was
Like,
gonna say for like 5 minutes if you're like really dumb and slow like me.
yeah, like I mean, like me, just introductory, like rudimentary, getting out there and doing it. But it's real fast and it's real easy in terms of the levels of nuance. Whereas chickens, you got to dunk those things, scald them. If you don't scald them enough, the feathers don't come off. You scald them too much, and you start like there's just a lot of nuance to that. Where I'm not saying it's bad. I've done it and I like it, but I think ultimately rabbits are just they fill it. We used to eat way more rabbit in this country than we do now. And I think part of that is just the commercialization of cheap chicken.
Yeah,
Um,
that's probably true. Well, and rabbits are cute.
well, there is that. I mean, but some would argue chickens are cute when they're in a chicken truck hauling down the road, and then it becomes like a in the arms of the angels, where it's like a PETA commercial or something. But I think a Cornish cross bird is heinously ugly, but they're brutally efficient at what they were bred to do.
But the problem is they don't self-replicate very well. Like we don't have chickens. We don't have a chicken population that is okay being a meat bird, can raise their own replacements and still give you reliable eggs. Like we don't have that chicken.
Doesn't exist. And that's the thing is for me with the rabbits is if you're chasing down a super easy to keep, super like hands off, simple way to start, shoring up your meat supply, because let's be honest, most of the people who listen to this podcast are probably in some facet of cattle production.
I don't know.
Well,
you know what my number one market is?
What's that?
Houston.
Oilers that want to be cattle one.
My number 2 market is Dallas, and my number 3 market is Kansas City.
Okay.
So backyard meat rabbits might be a thing.
I say that about about a bunch of wannabes, but once again, there are a lot of cattlemen in those areas because like the DFW statistical area, although has been laid waste to by suburban sprawl, just ask Richard. There still are on the outskirts of that. There's a lot of actual real cattlemen that are still doing their thing.
Oh, and I get Houston, that. And those are the guys that I all hear from. They're the ones that write in.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are on Patreon. They're the ones that are always sending me messages. I hear from those guys.
Yeah. Well, I think that's interesting though. That like so Houston, I'm not as familiar with Houston.
It's in Texas.
Thank you, Brian. Wow. I've been schooled on geopolitics today. Home to the Astros. So anyway, I think ultimately meat rabbits is a great complement to cattle production because at least for me, because I found that it's super easy. Like in terms of it's fairly hands off. You make sure the rabbits have some feed, have a little alfalfa and their water bottle stays full. And that takes like 2 minutes and it's done. And that's it. And they self-replicate, and if I go to the extent of raising out rabbits in a chicken tractor or a rabbit tractor, whatever you want to call it, like, moving that, I can keep it in my yard and they're going to fertilize my yard and mow my grass. And I mean, to me, I see it as a very simple thing because I'm kind of talking gloom and doom or whatever, but like, God forbid everything goes to crap in a handbasket like it did during the lockdowns. Like, ultimately, if you have a freezer full of beef, no matter how good your beef is, you're going to kind of get tired of just eating beef. And that's kind of the thought process I came to. It's like, okay, well, whatever. I also have I'm just saying, like, some variety is always fun. So I was just like, that, and I'm telling you what got me going down this thought path of this experiment is like, I'd like to have some other food supply that was just as secure as my low input grass finished beef is. Like I know that I can keep that operation going to some capacity with zero input if I had to. Whereas with chicken,
you got to have grain.
You got to have grain. With pork, you've got to have grain. Lamb, I could also do, and I'm actually gonna, God forbid, God help me, I'm gonna get a couple more sheep this fall, but I'm actually getting them for roux because I want. Yeah. Well, and I miss my own lamb. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Okay.
Bought some at the store the other day, and it was imported grass finished lamb from New Zealand, and it had zero flavor, unlike my lamb. And so I was like, you know what? Screw this. I'm just going back. Gonna just get a few and be able to produce my own because we love to eat lamb.
Just get a few.
In fact, yeah, and then it's like rabbits.
Just
they
get a few.
When I started, my original flock was 38. And when I sold them a year and a half later, there was over 200. So just saying, it happens. But ultimately, I think rabbits are something that more people should screw around with, because I think there's a lot of people, especially in the homesteader community, that, or even in ranching, like there's a lot of people that are raising their own chickens. And I think for most people, they'd be better off raising rabbits. Take that for what you
make a strong case. And my wife will probably listen to this and then come tell me that we're getting rabbits and ask her to build a rabbit tractor. Thanks, jerk.
Well, I mean, hey, I'm happy to give you a little extra honeydew, Miss Brian.
I appreciate that. More than
so I want to know what else is on your list, or have we covered everything? Because I feel like if we run out of your list, you're going to start talking politics to me, and that's a dangerous.
No, that's not this one. Not today.
Yes,
we'll get into that someday. That's a couple episodes down the line.
I was going to say that may be something we never make a podcast about. That might be a little too radical. So
maybe not you and I, but I bet there's somebody else that you follow on social media that I've got a podcast scheduled with.
Okay.
Eskimo Libertarian from Alaska.
Okay. Actually, I don't follow him.
Her.
Okay. Well, there you go. I don't follow him. Yeah.
So that should be coming up in about 3 weeks at recording time. Okay. Her interview is actually scheduled for 8 days from today, but it'll come out in about 3 weeks from the time you guys are hearing this. If something didn't screw up in the recording schedule and I don't remember to come edit this out.
Yeah.
But we're going to talk about we're going to get into libertarianism. Like I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to commit to that. I'm going to commit to getting a little political on the podcast.
Well,
and I think she's
then you can kick me up on that.
I think she's going to be a great one to do it with because she's Native Alaskan. We can talk about resilience, community food systems from the perspective of a Native Alaskan. And we can talk about libertarianism a little bit and what that means. And
that's awesome.
And what that means for everybody. I just have a couple other things on my list.
Cool.
Social links in the show notes. Anywhere else you want me to send traffic?
I really don't have that much social stuff, just TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and my website, reverentwildranch.com, or we're just at Reverent Wild Ranch on all socials.
Yeah. Good branding. I like it. So
keep it simple.
Yep. I guess really the only thing I have, and then I'll let you go, is what did you do to the guide stones?
I literally told my wife before I came to get on the computer, I was like, he's going to bring up the guide stones. I can feel it. I know it. The IRS just hired 87,000 new agents, and the FBI just raided Donald Trump's estate. So, with all that being said, the federal government is for sure listening to this podcast at this point because their AI has picked up on this.
Yeah.
I didn't do anything to the Georgia Guidestones, but I applaud the man that did.
Fair enough.
I mean, I really say this. I think it was probably a drunken 4th of July, living on a prayer, living on a dare, who knows? But, at the end of the day, what I'm interested to see is, do they go back up or not?
Ooh, that is a good question. That's a good question.
My thought is no, but I'm not writing anything out. Who knows at this point?
Well, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And I think with that, we'll let y'all go ahead and get on with your week, including all the FBI, ATF, NSA, and CIA listening to this now. So you guys enjoy your week too.
Yeah, y'all have fun, boys. Enjoy destroying the Constitution. Anyway, oh man, are we still on TikTok Live? Did that